Hi guys, it is Saturday, March the 6th, and I have big plans for this weekend in terms of getting stuff done, and that includes books and reading. So I thought I'd try again with a weekend vlog and maybe extend it past the weekend too. So this weekend I'm going to try and finish, no, I'm going to most certainly finish On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. I've read the first two parts and only have the third and last and I think shortest part to go. It's only about 80 pages, less than 80 pages. To recap, this is a novel styled as a letter written by a young man going on 30, I think, to his illiterate mother. And in this letter, he, to some degree, tries to come to terms with their relationship, but he's also just telling his story and asking the question or exploring the question of what made him who and what he is and how the relationship with his mother informed his personality. The first part of this, which is very much family history as well as early childhood, was a bit of a slog to get through, but in the second part, he is 14 years old for the most part, or he talks about the time when he was 14 years old for the most part, but there's always a mixture of epochs in this book. The letter writer doesn't confine himself to a strictly linear narration, which would make no sense because, of course, everything that he writes about is always informed not just by what came before, but also what came after, because this is of course a retrospective look at these events and feelings that he had growing up. So everything that he writes about, his viewpoint is informed and influenced by everything that happened up to the point at which he is writing. But the first part is mostly family history, the history of his grandmother and his mother, who grew up in Vietnam, and the history of how they first came to America and tried to find their bearings there. And it's also the story of the letter writer's early childhood. In the second part, he is mostly 14 years old. And I think the third part is a direct continuation of the second part, but with a lot more paragraphs about the writer's present day. I've been reading this a lot more quickly recently, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to finish it this weekend. I am also at the moment 2/3 of the way into a very interesting crime novel that was published in 1986, and it's set in San Francisco and has as its backdrop, or one of its backdrops, the San Francisco gay scene. However, the protagonist is quite alienated from that scene, and I assume that reflects the author's attitude. And to me, that makes it a more interesting and, to be honest, more pleasant read than most of the gay fiction or queer fiction from that period and with a similar urban setting. But the rest of the weekend is probably going to be one big try a chapter tag, because I'm going to try and select my next main book, the one which I'm going to read at the end of the day on the sofa or in bed. And I have a few candidates right now. My first candidate at the moment is Nothing Like the Sun by Anthony Burgess. This is a story about the young Shakespeare, and I enjoyed Anthony Burgess's Christopher Marley book, A Dead Man in Deptford, so much at the end of 2019, and I've been meaning to pick up this one ever since. But somehow was never in the mood for it. But I've been hearing so much about Shakespeare left and right these last few weeks that I think I'm about to get right into the mood for this one now. I am, however, at the moment at least equally as eager to pick up The Gift of Rain by Twan. I read Twan's second novel, The Garden of Evening Mists, a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago now. My copy looks a bit worse for wear because I took it on a camping trip with me and it got damp. This is a historical novel set in Malaysia. Twan is Malaysian. And it's set shortly after the Second World War. And a young woman comes to an aging Japanese gardener who still lives in Malaysia, somewhat controversially. She comes to him because she wants to ask him to build a memorial for her sister who died during the war in a Japanese internment camp, but who nevertheless to the last day got comfort or found comfort in the thought and memory of Japanese gardens. The gardener refuses, but offers to apprentice the woman instead so that she'll be able to design a garden for her sister herself. And like I said, this is an incredibly well orchestrated novel, and the way that all the pieces that the author sets up in the first part will come together in the end, it just blew my mind. It is so incredibly well done. And I'm thinking, or I'm hoping, that his first novel, The Gift of Wayne, will be even more poignant than the second one, just because the protagonist in this one is a young boy. Or I think in the course of events, he is growing into a young man. I'll just read you the back cover. It says Penang 1939. 16-year-old Philip Hutton is a loner. Half English, half Chinese, and feeling neither, he discovers a sense of belonging in an unexpected friendship with Hayato Endo, a Japanese diplomat who trains him in the art and discipline of Aikido. But the enigmatic Endo is bound by disciplines of his own. And when the Japanese invade Malaya, threatening to destroy Philip's family and everything he loves, he realizes that his trusted sensei has been harboring a devastating secret. Philip must risk everything to save those closest to him and to discover who and what he really is. Sounds really dramatic, but if The Garden of Evening Mists is anything to go by, then this is going to be a very quiet, introspective, personal novel. If you'd like to have a taste of how poignant Tan Twan Eng can be, then I link you to a podcast episode of the Guardian's Around the World Book Club podcast, where Tan Twan Eng reads an episode from The Garden of Evening Mists, which is not at all spoilery because it is entirely disconnected from the main story of The Garden of Evening Mists. It's a story about two kamikaze pilots, and it's not long at all. I think it's under 5 minutes long. So if you want a quick cry, and if you'd like to get an impression of Tan Twan Eng's writing, then this would be a good place to start. I am, however, in a minute also going to pick up another novel that I just noticed yesterday was available for overnight order to my local bookshop. And I might even pick this up first because it's a sequel to another novel that I've read lately. I'm going to show you later. But before I go, I just realized that I never told you the name of the author and the title of that crime novel. The author is Michael Nava, and the title is Lay Your Sleeping Head, which is what caught my attention because I love that W.H. Auden poem, of which this is the beginning. These are the beginning words, and the poem, if you are not familiar with it, is called Lullaby. Do look it up. It's absolutely lovely. However, that is not the novel's original title. The original title is The Little Death, and I think the book is still available in both editions, so be aware of that. There is an older edition called Little Death and a revised edition, revised by the author himself, that was published a few years ago under the title Lay Your Sleeping Head. I took On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous to the park with me this morning, and I forgot to take my equipment. So now I had to reread the passages and tap them. As you can see, or maybe you can't, I'm not sure, but the number of taps has grown exponentially almost in the third part that I've started to read. And that is because the style of the book has changed quite dramatically. To use an image from the book, it's like a sunflower that has grown higher and higher for 160 pages or so and now suddenly blooms. I have 45 pages or so still to go, and I'm very curious to see if it changes again or what it becomes in the end. And I also started to read Nothing Like the Sun. However, I read 2 pages or so, and I was already able to tell that this book is not one for the present moment for me. I thought that since the back tells us that it's the story of the young William Shakespeare as seen through a vision of a university lecturer, I thought that it was going to be told in the voice of that lecturer. It is, however, told in an approximation of Elizabethan England, an approximation because, of course, it is a style that is extrapolated to a large degree from Shakespeare's plays, which are the closest, I guess, that we come to spoken Elizabethan English. However, I think that Anthony Burgess does the same thing better and more smoothly and more elegantly in A Dead Man in Deptford. At least that is my impression right now, having only read the first 2 pages of Nothing Like the Sun. It might just be my unfamiliarity with the style that makes me perceive it as clunky and awkward. I am, however, not in the mood right now to really focus on a book like that and gave it the attention that it needs and the dedication that it needs to familiarize myself with the style. I think I'm going to pick one that is easier for me to get into right now. And I also have yet to show you what I picked up earlier. This is very exciting. It's The Lost Future of Pepperharrow. The paperback edition is out this month, and I think I got it early, quite early in fact. This is a sequel to The Watchmaker of Filigree Street, featuring the same main characters. I'm going to talk more about it in an upcoming wrap-up, but there is a lot to criticize with this book, and some of the same things that I had to criticize in Natasha Pulley's most recent novel, The Bedlam Stacks. However, the main character is just so extremely lovable to me that I enjoyed the reading experience so much that I can honestly say I loved the book nonetheless, and I'm so excited about a possibility to revisit the main characters and to go on an adventure with them in The Lost Future of Pepperharrow, which is going to take us from London to Japan. Natasha Pulley lived for a short while in Japan, so I trust her to write about it in an informed fashion. So this book is going to compete for my attention with this one. But knowing me, I think I can say that there is a high possibility that I might end up reading an entirely different book come tomorrow. However, this is my plan, to end up reading one of these books. But we shall see. Time will tell, I guess. I just watched a robin take a bath in that small vestigial pond over there, and now I'm crying. So cute. And a minute or so after the robin happened, I was jumped by a puppy, so now I'm leaving and going home before my heart explodes. Morning, guys. So I finished my crime novel last night, Lay Your Sleeping Head, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. And I haven't told you the story yet. So the protagonist in this one is Henry Rios, who is a public defender in suburban San Francisco. And one morning he has to take the case of a young man who was brought in unconscious the night before and is charged with possession of drugs. And he does have a rather sad history of drug addiction. However, in this particular case, he says he wasn't using or in possession of drugs, but that he was set up. And he tells this wild tale of corruption and of rather heinous crimes that were committed by his relatives. His family is one of the leading families in San Franciscan society. His great-grandfather is a judge, so very influential, and his great-great-grandfather owns the university. It's a fictitious university, but it looks a lot like Berkeley, I would say. It's not University of California, though. Henry doesn't believe the allegations at first, but then things happen that make him reconsider. I've seen this described as gay noir, and I think that is a very fitting term. It's definitely different from today's romantic suspense novels. It's much darker, much bleaker, and it's definitely not a comfort read. It did have some pacing problems, I think, and the first half in particular was all over the place. And it was all only really held together by the protagonist and narrator's feelings about his personal life, which is, of course, perfectly valid, but maybe something that you should know before going into this. Just know that it is not a fast-paced crime thriller by any means. It's almost like a character study of Henry Rios and his environment in suburban San Francisco. And that is perfectly okay, because Henry Rios is not just a sympathetic character and not just lovable, but downright admirable, I think. And it's kind of funny. I felt like the author, but Henry Rios has a drinking problem, and it felt like the author incorporated this because that is what you do in noir crime novels. You give your protagonist and hero or anti-hero a drinking problem. But it was funny because it never really influenced Henry's behavior and his actions. And for me as a reader, that was a good thing because I don't particularly enjoy these alcoholic characters of noir crime novels. But I loved Henry Rios, and I'm definitely going to continue with the series because I'd like to know the developments in his personal life. And I also finished On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous last night. Woohoo! That was one wild cerebral ride, especially towards the end. I mean, the whole thing feels like one big prose poem, but especially the third and last part. Every single sentence, especially in this last part, is precise and to the point and almost carries a whole book's worth of meaning. And I think the whole book's impact and significance is on the sentence level, because many, not all, but many of the episodes and the scenes described in the book are somewhat cliche, somewhat generic. That is not to say that I think they seemed unrealistic, just maybe nothing new. But the way they are interpreted and the way that Ocean Vuong distills a meaning out of it that is usually expressed in the last sentence of a paragraph, like you'd expect, that is where the book's power lies and where it gets you. In the last part, however, almost every sentence carries such a distilled meaning and is so significant. Maybe I'll read you a page where I thought that this was almost through the roof. It's not spoilery at all. So remember, this is a young man talking to his mother in a letter. The truth is, none of us are enough, but you know this already. The truth is, I came here hoping for a reason to stay. Sometimes those reasons are small, the way you pronounce spaghetti as spaghetti. It's late in the season, which means the winter roses, in full bloom along the National Bank, are suicide notes. Write that down. They say nothing lasts forever, but they're just scared it will last longer than they can love it. Are you there? Are you still walking? They say nothing lasts forever, and I'm writing you in the voice of an endangered species. The truth is, I'm worried they will get us before they get us. Tell me where it hurts. You have my word. I don't think I'm doing it justice, but just to give you an impression. This is definitely one to reread over and over again because it's so full of layers of meaning, almost every single sentence, that it's like poetry, and I've put it in the poetry corner on my shelves. I'm now about to go for a walk, among other things, to the little free library to get rid of my copy of The Vegetarian, which I finished last night during the Translatathon reading sprint. And I didn't think it was a bad book per se. I don't really see its value at this point in time. I'm going to talk more about it in an upcoming wrap-up recent reads video. So I have read the first few pages of The Gift of Rain, and I wasn't sure beforehand if this was the right book for me at this moment, because I was worried that it might be too slow for me at the moment. And it is slow, but it is also just a dream. The melancholy drips from every page, just like The Garden of Evening Mists. This is written from the perspective of an elderly man looking back on his life. So you know from the very beginning that it is necessarily going to be a story about loss of one kind or another. I am definitely going to continue with this one. By the way, this looks like a massive tome, but in reality, the pages are just extremely thick and strong. It is just under 500 pages long, which isn't that long. It is a long book, but it's not that long for a historical novel of this kind, I think. And it's not as big as it might look. However, there is one more book that has unexpectedly and kind of accidentally jumped onto the top position on my TBR list, and that is Olive Juice by TJ Klune. I kind of hate the title. This is a romance novella. It begins with a man preparing for a meeting with another man whom he hasn't seen in years, and there are some kind of regrets and some kind of feelings of guilt between them, and there is also a dead wife. That is all I know at this point. The reason that I'm reading this is I heard about it when I was watching a wrap-up video by Emir Andres. I link his channel, and I looked it up on Kindle, and I just meant to read the preview, but I accidentally clicked on buy with one click. And I accidentally bought it. I guess I could have returned it, but I decided to keep it. But now I want to know if it is worth the money. It wasn't that expensive. It's only a novella after all. I've read the first 2 or 3 pages, and I like the way it is written. It is also steeped in melancholy, and I think that this is going to be a heartbreaker, which is my favorite kind of romance novella, to be honest. Hi guys, it's already Monday morning, but I didn't get a chance to wrap this vlog up last night. But it was a good place to end, I think, because it's been a very successful reading weekend, if I say so myself. I finished 3 books that I had started prior to this weekend, and I found a new crime series. I also found a new long book to get lost in, The Gift of Rain, and I finally read some TJ Klune. I've been meaning to read one of his books for some time now, and in the end, I arrived there by accident, but it was a lucky accident because I'm enjoying this book very much. I'm still not completely sure what is going on and what the exact relationships of the 3 main characters are. The protagonist, the man that he is meeting in a hotel restaurant, and his wife who died or disappeared. I'm not sure. Or maybe she is supposed dead. I'm not sure at this point. And the reason why I am pretty much still in the dark about these things is at the same time the reason why I'm enjoying this book so much. It's because of the writing style. This is single viewpoint only, quite atypical for a romance novel these days, but it's the kind of narration that I prefer, especially in a romance novel. And it is told from the point of view of somebody who is extremely scatterbrained. He hasn't been in a good place for years now, and his thoughts are erratic, and he is also reluctant to confront certain thoughts and memories and avoids thinking them, and therefore the reader remains in the dark about them. I'm enjoying this immensely, and at this point I am already looking forward to wrapping it up in a wrap-up video. Anyhow, that's it for this vlog. Thank you for spending the weekend with me. I hope this has been entertaining. I'll see you all again very soon. Bye!